Hello, and welcome to the Community IT Innovators Technology Topics Podcast, where we discuss nonprofit technology, cybersecurity, tech project implementation, strategic planning, and nonprofit IT careers. Find us at communityit.com. Thank you for joining Community IT for this podcast, Part 1. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits. Listen for Part 2 in your podcast feed.
Welcome, everyone, to the Community IT Innovators webinar on staffing IT positions at nonprofits. We get a lot of questions from our clients and from nonprofits in general about how to find good IT staff, how to write job descriptions, how to know what staff positions you need, and when it makes sense to build an in-house IT department and when it makes sense to outsource some or all of your IT support. We also get questions about specialized IT roles and whether you must have an IT background to be able to manage nonprofit IT. So I'm excited today to moderate this question and this conversation and try to tackle all of those questions. Our learning objectives for this session are that after this session, you should be able to be familiar with typical IT descriptions and roles at nonprofits, learn typical experience and qualifications for nonprofit IT roles, understand in general when to outsource and when to build talent in-house and when to hire. I just want to remind everyone today that Community IT is vendor agnostic. This presentation is to discuss how nonprofits are approaching staffing and outsourcing. We only make recommendations to our clients based on specific business needs. And now I am happy to introduce our CEO, Johan Hammerstrom, who is joining us today. Johan?
Hi, good afternoon, Carolyn, and good afternoon to everyone who's joining us today. Thank you so much for being with us. My name is Johan Hammerstrom. I'm the CEO at Community IT. I've been with Community IT for about 23 years. I started off on the technical side and then moved over into management and became the CEO when we became an employee-owned company in 2015. And I've continued to spend a lot of my time talking with nonprofit organizations about their IT needs and helping them, think about the best way to use technology to accomplish their missions. And I'm grateful for all of the nonprofit organizations that we've had the privilege of working with over the years, and for all of you who are joining us today. And I'll hand it over to Nura, if you want to introduce yourself.
Okay. Thank you, Johan. Hello, everyone. My name is Nura Aboki. I'm an IT business manager and a senior consultant at Community IT. I've been at Community IT for 13 years, and I started as an entry-level tech, moved up to become an operations manager, and then later on to be a network manager and engineer, and became an IT business manager. And today I am a senior consultant at Community IT. So I've seen that levels in my 13-year journey. Currently, I advise our clients on best practices for managing technology infrastructure. I also conduct technology assessments, develop IT plans, and build strategic IT roadmaps, including IT budgeting for our clients. So I'm very grateful to be with you and look forward to having an exciting conversation about staffing IT positions. Carolyn?
Thank you, Nora. I'm so glad you both are with us too. My name is Carolyn Woodard. I'm in charge of outreach at Community IT, and I'm going to be helping Johan and Nura today and monitoring the Q&A. So I'm excited to dig into this topic with you and share some of our experiences. And now we like to begin with a poll to get to know something about you after you've heard about us. One of the major factors in what kind of IT staff you need to have is the size of your organization. Johan, if you wouldn't mind reading the different levels that people can answer.
Oh, sure. Number one is if your organization has between 1 and 10 staff. Level 2 is if you have between 11 and 25 staff. Level 3 is if you have between 26 and 50 staff. Level 4 is between 51 and 100 staff. Level 5 is if you have over 100 staff. And if this question doesn't apply to you, you can pick option number 6.
So we had pretty even distribution. It's not really a bell curve at all. About a third, 27% in the small 1 to 10, 20% in the 11 to 25, 13% in 26 to 50, kind of medium size there, 20% in between 51 and 100, so getting larger, and 13% answered 100 plus, and one person said this doesn't really apply. So that is really good to know. Thank you all so much. And actually, we have another poll for you that I'm going to go ahead and launch, because in addition to how large you are, there could be different, varieties across different sizes of organizations. So we also wanted to find out from you, how integral is IT to your mission and business needs? So Johan, would you mind reading again the questions that people can respond?
Sure, happy to. So level 1 is if you use IT for basic office support, you use it to send emails, print reports, but all of your business tools are online and you manage them yourselves. Level 2 is basic office support, but a little bit more. You have some business critical platforms that you need an IT expert to support, like a CRM or database, financial tools, more than what one office uses. Level 3 is if you deliver services using IT in addition to basic office support. So if you have a charter school that's using Chromebooks, if you're a healthcare provider that has iPads, for field work. Or level 4 is if you're using IT in sort of innovative and disruptive ways, you're sort of on the cutting edge, and that IT is central to your mission and the work that you're doing. So it's kind of meant to be sort of a continuum of, how central is IT to the work and program of your organization.
Which helps us get at kind of the question of what level of IT staff you may need and what level of support, and also how comfortable as an organization you may be taking on IT roles or making IT central to your organization, or if you're more, leery of IT, maybe you don't have a lot of IT expertise on your staff, and so you need some outside assistance too. And so we had a really good result on this. This one is a little bit more like a bell curve. So we had a whole bunch of people who fell in that basic office support plus. We have business critical platforms, IT supports, more than one office perhaps that need support. And that was about 71% of people on the webinar. And then a few people said that they are also delivering IT services, using IT to deliver services. So that might be, as you said, Johan, having Chromebooks in an education setting or something like that. And then one person answered that it was not applicable. All right. So thank you so much, everyone, for answering those quick questions. I think this gives us a really good feel for where people are in the attendees. We also had a bunch of questions that came in at registration. So we're going to be answering those as well. But I think, Johan, I want to turn it over to you for our first part of this discussion about IT roles and staffing.
Yeah, thanks, Carolyn. So we wanted to start today by talking about some of the typical IT staff roles that you might find at a nonprofit organization. These may apply to you. Some of the roles that we're going to talk about here may sound very familiar to you. We do appreciate everybody taking the time to answer those poll questions, because one of the factors that plays into the types of IT staff roles that make sense at a nonprofit organization is the size of the organization. The larger an organization is, the more likely it is that it needs to specialize in having dedicated IT staff. And in the same way, the more central IT is to the work that the nonprofit is doing, the more likely also it is that it makes sense for the nonprofit to have dedicated IT staff. So that's it was very helpful to get those answers, and we'll do our best to sort of gear our comments, towards the environments of the attendees of the webinar today. So we'll start with some of the roles that we see most commonly at nonprofit organizations. And maybe the best place to start is the accidental techie. That's probably a term that most of you are familiar with. If you're not, it basically means someone who did not come from a tech background, did not intend to get into technology, but through a variety of circumstances ended up having responsibility for the IT at an organization. So what kinds of things does an accidental techie take responsibility for?
Typically, it's a good question, Johan. And I say accidental techie, because by nature does not have that IT background, they may be interested in maybe solving their own problems and eventually able to maybe provide some end user support. So, for instance, my word processing application isn't working properly. They may be able to sort of troubleshoot some basic end user issues there. That's mostly when it starts. So you have a colleague in the office that is having a problem with the web browser. You might have experienced it before as an accidental techie, and that may be something that you would want to assist your colleague on and troubleshoot. And then the word spreads in the office that, hey, that we have it wouldn't be an accidental techie, but we have someone that knows IT or that can assist. And so it starts with really the end user support. That's where we begin to see interest develops for accidental techie at a nonprofit organization.
And I think if I'm not mistaken, that can be a very valuable role, particularly for both smaller nonprofit organizations, maybe nonprofit organizations who have staff that aren't as tech savvy. Having someone in the organization who can assist with basic IT issues can be valuable, right?
Yes, certainly. It's a role, as you mentioned, the size of the organization can benefit from having someone in-house that actually can assist, because that person is likely going to have a quick way of resolving an issue, and they may actually build a skill set, even though it's by accident, that may end up being highly valuable at the organization later. As the organization grows and consider other IT positions and roles within the organization, that accidental techie could actually lead IT at the organization eventually.
Yeah, it can become something that's a little more formalized. And in fact, I think in our experience, it's helpful to formalize that role and not just have it be. I think that the term accidental comes from the fact that, like you were saying, Nura, oftentimes, and this is something that happened, over the last 10 or 15 years as IT became more common in nonprofit office environments. People would just sort of naturally gravitate towards the person who could solve their IT problems. But formalizing that responsibility, recognizing that there's a need for that in the organization, and then formally identifying the person who is responsible for that important organizational responsibility is, I think, an important part of supporting people who are in that accidental techie role.
That's exactly true, Johan.
At what point, what other things can an organization do to support their accidental techie, or at what point should they start to think about maybe getting some more professional help to assist with their IT needs?
So in the nonprofit space, fortunately, there are nonprofit organizations today that are using high-end technology because of its accessibility and affordability. There are programs there, donation programs that make this technology, new cutting-edge technology, be accessible to nonprofit organizations. So when an accidental techie within an organization begins to show potential, certainly empowering and creating the capacity for that accidental techie to take on more of the deliberate approach of learning what technologies nonprofit organizations are using that can be brought into that business or that nonprofit organization will be highly valuable. To create and be deliberate about empowering that individual or individuals at the nonprofit organization to not only be accidental techies, but to actually look at an IT role within the organization.
Yeah, it's being intentional about it, as you say, being deliberate about it is very important, and kind of recognizing that IT is a critical area of business responsibility that needs to be formalized is really important. And on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the management positions, which I think is often a natural evolution for somebody in an accidental techie role, is getting to the point where they maybe take on more IT management responsibilities for the organization. I did want to talk a little bit about more technical roles. So there's the accidental techie role. What are some of the entry-level positions, especially larger organizations, may find it valuable to staff?
Oftentimes we see entry-level positions start out with a title called the systems administrator. So some may frame it the IT administrator. And essentially that entry-level role is providing intentional end-user support to the client or the nonprofit organization. And sometimes that IT administrator or system administrator is not just only responsible for the IT infrastructure, they may be also overseeing some of their applications that the organization may be using, information systems as well. So that is one. Another entry-level role is for larger organizations. We hear about the help desk or the IT help desk. And that is also for organizations that actually want to route or maybe might already have an IT department, and they are staffing the IT department with an IT entry-level role for help desk. Those are the first line of defense, or providing the first line support for the staff at the nonprofit organization. So those are the two popular ones that we see across nonprofit organizations.
And for me, there's usually three factors that go into deciding whether or not it makes sense to hire someone full-time to provide IT support, basic sort of entry-level IT support to the rest of the organization. One factor is the volume of support requests, which could be related to size, but not always. You could have a very large organization with not many support requests. You could have a smaller organization because of the nature of the work they do that has a high ticket volume, as we say.
Right.
But you want to make sure that the support volume is such that it justifies having one person full time. I think in general, organizations will find that it's less expensive to hire someone in-house to provide full-time help desk support than it is to outsource that function, provided that there's enough support volume to keep that person busy for that entire time. The second factor is keeping in mind that someone will need to manage that person. So, it's kind of like the free puppy, old adage. If you do hire a technical staff, keep in mind that you'll need to manage those technical staff, which is different from managing non-technical staff. And it's not that it can't be done. I mean, obviously that's, something we have a lot of experience with, but just something to keep in mind. That person will need to be managed. And also technical staff, they're seeking peer connections and relationships. They're interested in technical professional development. So there's a host of issues that go along with that, that it's important to keep in mind. And then the third is the degree to which the organization needs custom support. So if an organization has its own proprietary software package, it might make sense to bring on someone in an entry-level position to help provide support for that package. If an organization has specific customer service requirements or just wants someone who's a part of the organization to provide support to the rest of the staff, then there can also be, great value in having someone in an entry-level position. So those are kind of the three factors that I think are worth keeping in mind as organizations consider hiring into the entry level. What about more advanced technical staff? Are there times where it makes sense to create in-house positions for advanced technical work?
Yes, there are certainly opportunities for that for some organizations. Going just a little bit back to the one of the entry-level roles, a system administrator may sometimes wear the hat or may have the technical competency to actually work on advanced engineering roles. So, but having an individual wear multiple hats is not the best approach to solving some of the challenges in managing IT or providing good IT support. So some organizations may want to delineate that. And especially if they are tech-heavy organizations where they are implementing a lot of projects, building applications, replacing network infrastructure upgrades, and overseeing even their, let's say, partner or volunteer databases, there may be need for a highly technical role to be brought in to manage and oversee that. So that's why we see some titles like the systems engineer, the network engineer, and some senior titles associated with those type of engineering roles.
I really appreciate your comment, Nura, about the multiple hats problem. And I think we'll come back to that on the next slide when we talk about the management roles. But the various types of technical work that need to get done in an organization and the various levels of management and planning that are required for those technical roles to be successful are very difficult to combine are very difficult to give to a single person. And if you're lucky enough to find that person, they can be hard to hold on to. And then it can be hard to replace them. So keeping the fact that, every bullet point here on this slide sort of represents a different position. And while it can be tempting to want to combine those, that can also create a lot of challenges. I think one of the things that we're seeing more and more is these, what we're calling tech adjacent roles. And it's really, sort of infrastructure adjacent roles where I think increasingly like organizations that are smaller than they once were for this are starting to add roles that are specific to the needs of that organization. So a database manager, for example, if an organization is using a database pretty heavily to do its work, reporting on data in that database, they might have someone in-house who specializes in that. If more technical, social media engagement, online marketing is something that's very central to the work that the organization is doing, they'll have someone in that role who's going to have some level of responsibility for IT. Is that something that you're seeing in the organizations that you work with as well, Nura?
Yes, the adoption of technology has spawned up this, certainly this tech adjacent roles. So it's very common. It's becoming popular these days. And organizations, not perfect organizations, don't want to, for instance, be left behind when there's social media and marketing campaigns. They want to be on the forefront in using technology, and they are. I've seen more deliberate approach to hiring someone that has the expertise to actually manage that aspect of their business or mission. Similarly, database manager and information manager, these are all roles that, because of the advent and adoption of new technology, cloud technology, cloud-based software as a service solutions, we are seeing dedicated tech adjacent roles. Some small organizations can get away with having overlaps, but depending on also what they do, even if you're small and you are working on tech-heavy, providing a tech-heavy mission to the world, certainly you may want to consider having this tech-adjacent roles to help you be effective in using technology there.
Yeah. Well, let's we've got a lot to cover, and we could probably spend the whole webinar talking about these IT staff roles. But other very important roles, and something that we've seen more and more of over the last 5 to 10 years, are the IT management roles at nonprofits. And I think the growing recognition that for IT to be successful, it has to be well managed. And in order for IT to be well managed, someone needs to take responsibility for that. So what, tell us a little bit about, and you, Nura, have a lot of experience in your role as an IT business manager for a number of nonprofit organizations. What are the main responsibilities of someone at the IT manager level? What is that position responsible for, and why is it important to have that someone taking care of those responsibilities at an organization?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you, Johan. Certainly in my role as an IT business manager, as the title indicates, this IT business manager role really is central to the management of the technology infrastructure of that client's network. And by that, I mean ensuring that all the aspects of the infrastructure, whether it's networking or software, end user support, is healthy and running smoothly. That is one metric that can be used to judge whether an IT manager is successful at delivering service or not. Now, an IT manager for a small organization can be just one person. Some larger organizations have multi-structure IT departments that fill in IT managers, and even maybe not a single IT manager. It could be an IT manager for infrastructure, an IT manager for cybersecurity. So depending on the type of organization you have, having an IT manager own the IT infrastructure, own the information systems would be beneficial for your organization. And when I say own, they have a seat in addressing the most complex IT issues that you have. And whether they seek help with external partners or they build out an IT department to support them, it's up to that IT manager to make sure that the health of the network is at a good state. So that's primarily what I see as an IT manager. There are some day-to-day activities that we engage in, but because in the interest of time, I would want to allow for us to talk about the other roles as well.
Yeah. And in an organization where the IT manager is, let's say, the senior most IT position in the organization, who are they typically reporting to?
So certainly the executive director or someone in the C-suite or the executive team or senior leaders at the organization, decision makers. That's the kind of interaction that we see. There's times when we, in that team, it could be the chief financial officer or the director of finance, but who has the listening ear and of the executive director, if the executive director isn't available. So those are the kind of top level collaboration and partnerships that we have with our clients. We are able to sit with senior leadership and to drive initiatives and to ensure that there is buy-in at that senior executive level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they might be reporting up through finance. Yeah. For large for smaller organizations, maybe it would be a director of finance, or for larger organizations, it may be someone more senior. And I think also operations. Some organizations have split operations from finance.
Yes, Johan, that's also true. That operations is central to what an IT manager does. So you can find the IT manager reporting to a VP, for instance, of operations, making sure that there's good oversight and all the initiatives that the IT manager sets out. It's communicated effectively by that to that VP of operations who has a seat at the table with the executive team. Sometimes that IT manager may also wear multiple hats. And that is where I think, Johan, it'd be interesting to hear your views on the multiple hat problem, where the IT operations manager is the IT manager. How do you reconcile?
I think the most common version of the multiple hats problem I see with IT management is, I think, organizations are trying to be resourceful and frugal, which is good, but hoping that the person in the management role can also handle the day-to-day support needs of the organization. And that is a very difficult person to try to go out and hire. What we've found is that if you hire someone who's strong technically on day-to-day support, they will end up gravitating towards that, and the management responsibilities will suffer. Or if you find someone who is strong at IT management and focuses on that, they won't have enough time to handle the day-to-day support needs. So it's important when thinking about creating or establishing these roles at your organization that you really ensure that they have the focus and the purpose of managing IT for the organization, and not trying to fill the role up with too many responsibilities that might end up coming into conflict with each other.
Thank you for joining Community IT for this podcast, Part 1. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits. Listen for Part 2 in your podcast feed. Community IT does these free webinars and podcasts for our community, and we love sharing our knowledge and experience. If you have more questions or are having trouble with your IT at your nonprofit, please get in touch with us on our website, www.communityit.com, so we can start a conversation or schedule an assessment. Downloading any of our free resources there will get you signed up for our webinar reminders, and you can attend our next webinar in real time and ask our experts your own questions. If you love podcasts, please subscribe and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits.